As Stefan said, I'm the CEO or the chairman of the Open Source Business Alliance. For money, I'm running my own company, which is an open source company devoted to open source identity management, application integration, application portals. And I'm also, together with Stefan, one of the founders of APELL, the European Umbrella Association of National Open Source Business Associations. Originally, I studied psychology and physics, but somehow ended up in IT, and I don't want to go away from IT anymore, I guess. So, and during the last 20 years, I think I have spent most of my time, of my professional work time, working on open source. Everything we did, no, that was the wrong one. That is a Windows PC here, yes. So I must be careful with the touchpad here. Yes, have been working on open source and digital sovereignty, a concept Frank just introduced us to, and I really think that today we see more than ever why this is really very, very important. And to see why this is the case, let us look a little bit at cloud computing. Frank also made some remarks, but I think I have a slightly different angle here. Cloud computing has a great promise. It's just computing from the power outlet. You don't have to care about anything anymore. Like electricity, built according to your needs and or your consumption. You don't have to worry about productions, about servers or anything. It's just there. IT services are available at the push of a button. Infrastructure services, software services, platform services, you name it. No need to build data centers or maintain software or apply updates or whatever, all this dirty thing you don't want to do. Everybody has instantly access to it. It's very easy to use. You just set up your account and can use a crazy infinite computing power, for example, for very complex AI tasks. And using the cloud, you can reach and use everyone, everywhere, and use every resource everywhere. What a great word. And I think this is really a great promise. And we should not say no to it in principle, but we should think of it, because this promise can help humanity in many kinds. These things are well advertised, but the cloud and these vast computing powers and the easiness, how we can access it, can help us to improve our own skills through better learning. It will us allow to use energy and to distribute energy much more efficiently than we did in the past, and might help to solve the energy problem. It will also allow us to create new solutions in the field of healthcare and medicine, leading us to longer and better lives. And it can also help us to build better states, better administrations, more human-centered industries, and much, much more. So a great thing. What a great opportunity. And with all the marketeers of cloud computing, I believe this opportunity is real, and we should do everything to make it happen. But at the same time, there are big risks that could lead to a completely different, a very bad outcome, and we need to know about them to prevent them. And I think the central cause of all these risks is the following. Because cloud computing has these great potentials, once you are using it, once your communication depends on it, once your products or once government actions depend on it, it will become next to impossible not to use it anymore. That means cloud computing will become a mandatory precondition of modern life in a similar way in which streets, railway, communication, and energy networks became mandatory requirement of the Industrial Revolution. Individuals, industry, science, and governments will be totally dependent on cloud computing. We are building really a very, very crucial infrastructure here. And this dependency will only increase because from the perspective of a hyperscaler, for example, there should be no reason for a customer to run anything outside of the hyperscaler's cloud. Frank just told us how Microsoft is doing this. Everything in my cloud. Therefore, cloud vendors build cloud platforms with strong platform effects, locking in customers on their specific services. These lock-in effects, of course, are not a new thing. We already had powerful lock-in effects with proprietary software platforms like Microsoft Windows, Oracle or SAP or Azure or Google Cloud. But with the cloud, these effects will be much stronger because cloud providers can immediately stop the possibility for customers to access the data they have generated or stored in the cloud. They can immediately switch it off. That was not that easy with on-premises software, even if it was proprietary. And of course, there's no possibility to somehow store cloud services. We have now the problem in Germany with gas. We can store gas a little bit, but we can't store cloud services. We can store food and industrial produce, but not cloud services. Once it's switched off, it's not there, it's not usable. You rely totally on this. And furthermore, providers can and do also set up rules who outside the provider's platform may provide additional services and can access your data under which conditions. Data transfer to a company belonging to the ecosystem, to the friendly ecosystem of the vendor, might be much easier and cheaper than services belonging to a competitor. This further strengthens the platform effect. Competitors can be squeezed out and only a few are able to provide services in a state-of-the-art quality, scale, and selection. Cloud services tend to become a winner-takes-it-all business, and that is this 3 or 4 data centers in the world picture some people are drawing. The situation is a little bit like if the road, railway, and telecommunication networks built during the Industrial Revolution would have been owned by a single private sector company, and if this vendor would then have the opportunity to rule who can access roads, railway, energy, and communications, at which price, and under which condition. Every other industrial company which wants, for example, to deliver goods to their customers or needs to buy energy for production would rely on this big infrastructure corp and would always have to fear that delivery of goods or the purchase of energy can no longer be financed. We certainly would not have allowed that because then the Industrial Revolution would not have been successful. There would be no trust in the infrastructure. And I think the Industrial Revolution was successful because governments make sure that you can trust the infrastructure. And we already have deep and dangerous dependencies on specific cloud services today, which will further grow if we don't do something about it. This dependence brings with it a large number of dangerous negative effects. First of all, governments and industries become vulnerable to blackmailing. Right now, Europe, and as I said, especially we in Germany, discover how dangerous this is with oil and gas. It will be much more dangerous with cloud services we rely on. Cloud operators measure the customer's interactions with the cloud and typically can also access their customers' data. They can use it to their own advantage, but they also will have to hand this information to the governments under which jurisdiction they operate. It will become much harder to protect classified data. Once this dependency is established, license and subscriptions costs go up because there's no free market anymore. This can be seen, for example, with the fees the German government is paying to Microsoft. They are only increasing by 2-digit percentages a year, even without a growing number of government workers. But this is also a major threat for the classic industry. For example, machine builders use proprietary AI algorithms from the cloud to enable predictive maintenance, know when the machine has to be maintained. Once the cloud providers figure that their customers, the machine builders, can only sell machines using these services, and at the same time that switching to another provider is next to impossible, fees will go up and margins will decrease for the machine builders. In the end, that will mean that the machine building industry will lose its ability to innovate, while cloud providers will accrue more money and power. And furthermore, there is also a physical dependence on the cloud. The cloud is running somewhere, but that if that somewhere is no longer there for some reason or breaks down or the connection to it is lost, services, data, communication are missing from one moment to the next. You will completely lose your ability to operate. And finally, relying, and that's what Frank also said, relying on technology you can't study or change will take away your ability to innovate technology yourself. I think besides all the financial, security, and infrastructure risks, this is one of the most important risks because it will take away our ability to shape the future in the way we want it to be. So if we are not careful, we can end up in a world where our governments are heavily dependent on the will of other governments, not controlled by our democracies. Our industries will lose their capability to innovate and market profitable products, and all kinds of communication might be open to other states' governments. We will become totally dependent satellite states, economically and technically dependent on others and subjects of their rulings. What we are now experiencing again with the dependencies on Russian gas is only a foretaste of this. And it will be only a question of time until these states we depend on will impose their ethical systems on us. Like, for example, many African states did not vote in the UN against the Ukraine war because they had big ties to Russian and Chinese industries. And these risks will have maximum impact on everything because it affects everything which is important for all areas of our lives. Private communication, our industries, our governments and administration, research and education, our democracies, and our ability to defend ourselves by military means. And I would not have thought a few years ago that I would mention this point too, but I think it's important now. So how can we overcome this? How can we get out of this? And regain the ability to shape and create, to communicate and store and exchange our data safely. We need to develop a modern, open digital infrastructure which is reliably available and usable to everyone, even in a crisis. In regards to cloud services, this means we must make sure that there's choice and a free market on the one side, and that it is easily possible to switch providers and to combine providers to your own needs. Technology must be open and switching costs must be kept low. Furthermore, we must also actually build the needed resources. We need to define open standards with open source reference implementations. We need to grow European cloud providers which can offer services adhering to these standards, and we need to address the shortage of skilled workers and train and inspire people to work on these important tasks. The connecting elements of all of this are digital sovereignty and open source. Without them, no independence, no ability to create and change, no sufficient security. And building blocks of digital sovereignty are interoperability and open standards, which always need, as I said, an open source reference implementation. Second, federation must be the underlying architectural principle of everything we do. If you want to store data at one provider and use a service from a different provider, this needs to be possible. And third, only if a service is built with open source, we can be sure that it is transparent and can be controlled. Finally, as I said, we need also the skills and people willing to work on this, and this is also a problem we need to address. Luckily, there are already a number of projects with these goals in the making on the national level as well as in some on the national level in EU member states and also on the EU level. And I think this is very important that we make these projects really successful. We in the Open Source Business Alliance and also in my company at Univention are part of some of those projects, and I want to give you two examples. The first one is the Sovereign Cloud Stack project, which we developed in the Open Source Business Alliance. The goal is to set up a complete technology stack to allow everyone to set up its own cloud. It's not for you at home probably, but for companies, for cloud service providers, to enable them to set up clouds in an interoperable, federable way. SCS is already used in production by some cloud service providers and in many private clouds. Its development is funded by the German Ministry of Economy and Climate. We are also very happy that it will be the reference platform for the Gaia-X Federation services currently developed by another association. And the principle here is to integrate existing proven components such as OpenStack and Kubernetes with each other and make them easily accessible. It's a complex task, and managing and integrating all these components yourself is extremely needs extreme resources, and we take away for everyone the need to spend these resources. You can just use SCS. And the second one is the Sovereign Workplace for the administration. Together with Dataport, a IT service company owned by 4 German states, we are developing this Sovereign Workplace environment as an alternative to products like Google G Suite or Microsoft 365. By the way, it runs on top of SCS. This project follows a best-of-breed strategy and integrates well-known, proven products like Element Matrix, Nextcloud, Jitsi, Collabora Online, Open Exchange, and our identity and access management stack. The project has been started 2 years ago by Dataport as the Phoenix project, maybe you have heard about it, and is now supported and funded by the Federal Ministry of the Interior and officially supported by all 16 German states and the federal government. And it's already in use. Just this week, the state of Baden-Württemberg announced that they will roll out it for all their teachers. With this, an open platform will evolve on top of open infrastructure or platform services, which will provide open standards to integrate the business applications of the government, as well as other applications. It's also a goal to be able to exchange single components, so maybe use BBB or something else, OpenTalk instead of Jitsi, by similar components of other vendors. And now I have a final thought. I believe that we also need some kind of legal governance and funding framework around all of this. Today, we have many different initiatives, and in the end, digital sovereignty and open source, I think, will only be successful if we can leverage the whole ecosystem. I see the risk that companies and stakeholders are working too much against each other. That, to orchestrate, is a huge and very, very complex task, and we must work together. At the same time, as I said, the companies in the open source space quite often see other open source companies more as competitor than, for example, Microsoft or the hyperscalers. Many open source companies might be taken over also by venture capitalists or other companies who are not that much interested in digital sovereignty. That's also a risk we have to address. Therefore, I envision some kind of foundation for open infrastructure which ensures that companies work together and that the digital road and railway networks of the next century are as reliably available as the networks of the industrialization have been. This could be maybe achieved by acquiring shares of the companies willing to cooperate. Even minority shareholdings would be sufficient, and through blocking minorities, appropriate governance guidelines could be adopted. This is a new idea I'm thinking about. I'm interested to hear what you are thinking about. So if you have any ideas about it, please tell me. Unfortunately, I've to leave soon for my plane, but I skipped this because I think we are already short in time. Or it's just the key takeaways. It's the last one, yeah. It's just the key takeaways. The cloud is powerful. We should really use its potentials, but in the right way. And we need to make sure that the new networks, that the new foundations of the next industrialization, of the digitization, will be as reliably available and open to everyone as the old networks have been. That has been very wise by the kings and democracies in the 19th century to make them available to everyone. And and some great projects are already in the making. I'm confident that this task can be achieved. We had private railways in the beginning of railway buildings too, and private roads, but then people understood it should be done in a different way. And maybe we should think about some governing entity who can orchestrate this in a better way. Here's my contact data, so if you have any thoughts about it, please write me. Maybe I have 5 more minutes and then I have to hurry up to my plane. Thank you.
One or two questions. Are there any? Yes, one. You are calling for foundation for open infrastructure, something like that. So there is already open infrastructure foundation, which manages OpenStack, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Yeah, true. There are many open source foundations, like the Open Infrastructure Foundation, the Linux Foundation, the Eclipse Foundation, but they are not controlling they cannot impose policies and governance on the companies who drive this, who need to drive this forward. And I think we need to go one step further here. That's the difference.
Okay. One question. I read from the last slide that your ideal world would be where governments or Europe or whatever manages the availability of open infrastructures. How would you see its creation? Like, would it be similar to like universities and research institutes which manages the future in a longer term, like for theoretical research, for instance? Would you see something similar for infrastructure in terms of development?
I think it must be, in the end, it should be an effort with many stakeholders. And I don't think that it's only the governments and only the European Union. It's also the industry. I've spoken with many leaders of larger German companies who told me also we need something like this. because we rely on those networks to deliver our products. We rely on a foundation which we can use to make our business. And so I think somehow state, society, industry, all parts of the society need to come together and drive this forward. Because this is the next revolution of our lives, and we cannot say this is only a state thingy or a civil society thingy. It's
yeah, but you compared it to roads and like bridges or railways, and it's like commonly admitted that when private companies manage roads or railways, it's more expensive and less efficient, like than when states.
yeah, but still you have private companies. In most countries, private companies build the roads, and private companies build trains, and so we need to come up with some agreement. Who does what needs to be. So the state, we all know that the state is very inefficient in many aspects, and in others we need him. We desperately need him, and we need to have this discussion. Okay.
One question, sorry. Few months ago, in a newspaper, in French newspaper, Le Monde, there is a paper, an article where they compare cloud and nuclear bomb, and they say remind in the 50s when we don't have these powers, or we still don't have it in Germany, but in France, and they say we don't have the technology, so we take the technology because they are too far away in the US.
Mm.
Take the US technology, and after we make sort of fork to have our own nuclear bomb. But it was too late. If we don't do that, they are very, very, very far away. And they compare that with the cloud, saying that they are very, very, very far away. So war is over for that. So the better way is to take what they are and like the nuclear bomb in the 50s, do the same. Take it as it is and then try to fork our own solution. What do you think about that? It's not to reinvent the wheel, but hey, they are too far away. Let's take it and then try to fork.
I think, well, the first thing it's not that easy to fork it. If the whole system is not running under your control, if you just have data connections to it, it's quite difficult. It's a different thing if you buy a plane and then you can look at it and look at the parts, and in the 30s or 40s or 50s, it's different. I agree that we should not reinvent things in most cases which are already there. But at the same time, this industry moves very quickly, and there's every 2 or 3 years room for disruption and room for a new generation of technology, and we should think ahead here and make the next generation in a better way. And this, of course, will only be possible if we have a foundation we can build on. So we need to invest in that foundation. Even if in some cases people would say, well, you can buy this already somewhere. But yes, if there's a road and you don't know what you will be charged tomorrow, maybe you still will build another road, just for security. Okay, thank you.